Stop scrolling. This is an urgent message for you. Not for the person who saw this yesterday, not for the one who will see it tomorrow. For you right now, in this exact moment where eternity crashes into your reality with the force of a cosmic collision that has been planned since before time began. Do you feel that shift in the atmosphere around you? That subtle trembling? That almost imperceptible change in the air you are breathing? That is not your imagination playing tricks on your wounded mind. That is heaven responding to something you did today. Something that looked so small, so broken, so devastatingly human that the world would have missed it completely. But heaven caught it. Heaven felt it. Heaven witnessed it with the kind of attention that stops angelic songs mid-note. And heaven is about to respond in ways that will shatter every lie you have believed about your worth, your purpose, your capacity to be loved in your most unfiltered moments. There are sounds in the unseen realm that theologians don't talk about in their polished sermons. We know about the roar of angelic armies that make mountains bow and demons flee in terror. We know about the thunder of divine voice that splits seas, moves mountains, and reshapes reality with a single word. But there is another sound, one that breaks through every religious facade you have ever hidden behind. It is the sound of heaven weeping with you, not at you. Not tears of disappointment from some distant cosmic judge tallying your failures on a celestial spreadsheet. Not the weeping of a deity who has grown tired of your questions, your midnight breakdowns, your desperate prayers that feel like they are bouncing off brass heavens and falling back to earth like rejected petitions. But the raw guttural sobbing of a father whose love runs so deep that your wounds become his wounds, your tears become his tears, your breaking becomes the very heartbeat of his infinite compassion. And today, those tears fell because of you. What you did may have looked like complete surrender to everyone watching, broken, desperate, ugly in its unfiltered honesty. The kind of moment that makes people uncomfortable because it reminds them of their own carefully hidden fractures, their own secret midnight wars with despair that they have dressed up in socially acceptable language. You cried when strength was expected. You admitted defeat when victory was demanded by every motivational post flooding your timeline. You whispered, "I cannot do this anymore," when the world screamed you must push through with all the subtlety of a freight train crushing everything in its path. You let yourself be seen in your most unfiltered, unpolished, devastatingly authentic moment. The moment when the mask finally became too heavy to wear, when the performance required more energy than you had left to give, when authenticity felt like the only rebellion you had strength for, in a world that profits from your pretending. It made no one's highlight reel. No one posted about your breakdown with inspirational quotes overlaid on sunset photos. Maybe no one even witnessed it. Just you alone with your breaking, wondering if anyone in the entire universe gave a damn about the war being fought in the trenches of your soul, about the battle for your very breath that happens behind closed doors. But heaven did. Heaven saw every trembling breath. Heaven felt every silent scream that tore through your chest. Heaven caught every tear before it even formed in your eyes, treasuring each one like liquid diamonds that tell the story of a warrior who refused to give up even when giving up seemed like the only logical choice. And when heaven witnessed your moment of raw, unedited truth, the throne room didn't just notice. It shook with recognition, like the moment a parent finally sees their child's real wounds instead of the brave face they have been wearing to protect everyone else's comfort, to maintain the illusion that everything is manageable. God wept, not because you were weak, but because you were finally devastatingly real. He wept because what the enemy designed as your destruction has just become the sacred ground of your resurrection. What was meant to be your grave has just been revealed as your garden. What looked like your ending was actually heaven's setup for your beginning. Think about that. Let it settle into the broken places in your chest like healing balm on wounds that have been festering in darkness. The very moment you thought disqualified you from love has just become your greatest qualification for grace. The instant you believed proved your unworthiness has just demonstrated your incredible worth to the one who counts scars. As beauty marks, you have been carrying shame like a second skin, haven't you? Replaying your collapse, your moment of complete unraveling, your admission that you are not the person everyone thought you were. You convince yourself that unless your healing looks Instagram-ready, it doesn't count. Unless your breakthrough comes with background music and perfect lighting, it is not legitimate testimony. But let me tell you something that will shatter every lie you have whispered to yourself in the darkness of 3 a.m. Anxiety attacks heaven counts scars differently than earth does. Heaven measures worth by different mathematics than the world's broken calculator of human value. You see the breakdown. He sees the breakthrough waiting in the wreckage like buried treasure in a demolished building. You see the moment you fell apart. He sees the courage it took to finally stop pretending everything was fine when your soul was screaming for help, for presence, for someone to see past the facade. You see failure written across your forehead in permanent ink. He sees the first honest prayer you have prayed in years, the first real conversation you have had with him since you learned to edit your pain for public consumption, to make your struggles palatable for people who cannot handle raw humanity. You see your vulnerability as disqualifying evidence that you are not strong enough for whatever comes next. Heaven sees your openness as the most revolutionary act you could perform in a world addicted to artificial strength, to plastic perfection, to the exhausting performance of having it all together. That is why he wept. Because today, without even realizing it, you broke every rule hell had written for your life. You were supposed to keep pretending. You were supposed to die slowly behind your mask, suffocating in the space between who you really are and who you think you need to be for others to accept you. You were supposed to carry your pain in silence, to bleed internally while smiling externally, to become a casualty of the war between authentic humanity and performed perfection that is killing souls in churches and boardrooms and living rooms across the world. Instead, you shattered, and that breaking made heaven tremble with recognition, because finally, the real you could be seen, held, healed, and loved, not despite your brokenness, but because of your courage to let it show. Let me give you an image that will change everything about how you see your breaking moments. Picture a parent watching their child finally stop pretending they are not hurt. Stop saying "I am fine" when they are bleeding internally. Stop performing strength when their soul is crying out for comfort, for someone to see their wounds and love them anyway. The parent isn't disappointed that the child isn't stronger. They are not frustrated with their fragility or annoyed by their need. They are overwhelmed with relief that sounds like gratitude mixed with grief. Finally, the pretending can stop. Finally, the real healing can begin. Finally, the authentic relationship can start, built on truth instead of performance. That is how God looked at you today, not with shame over your breaking, not with frustration at your fragility, not with disappointment that you couldn't hold it together for just a little bit longer, couldn't be stronger than your circumstances, couldn't faith your way out of very real human limitations, but with overwhelming relief that you finally trusted him with your real self, with the parts that don't have answers, with the pieces that don't fit the mold, with the wounds that are still bleeding despite years of trying to heal them through willpower and positive thinking and spiritual bypassing. Heaven didn't just witness your moment of authentic vulnerability. It celebrated it with the kind of joy that makes angels weep and demons flee. Not because your pain was good, but because your honesty was holy. Not because breaking is the goal, but because breakthrough requires the courage to let yourself be seen in pieces. And here is what you need to engrave on the broken places in your heart until it becomes more real than your shame, more true than your fear. The fact that you are still breathing after what tried to destroy you is not just survival. It is testimony written in scar tissue and signed with the blood of your persistence. The enemy's plan for you was never gentle. It was surgical in its precision, calculated in its cruelty, designed to cut so deep that you had never trust love again, never risk vulnerability again, never believe you deserved healing again, never imagine that your scars could become sacred instead of shameful. Yet here you are, broken, maybe bleeding perhaps, barely holding on possibly, but breathing, and every breath you take is a rebellion against everything that said you wouldn't make it through another day, another hour, another moment of this relentless ache that has become your unwanted companion. Your existence today is not accidental endurance. It is not dumb luck or stubborn refusal to give up. It is proof that there is something unbreakable at your core, something the darkness couldn't touch, even when it tried to devour everything else that made you who you are. This is why you cannot, you must not, you dare not underestimate the power of honest moments like the one you live today. Heaven's economy is not built on performance metrics or social media statistics. Heaven's currency is not polished presentations that hide the mess or carefully curated testimonies that skip the dark nights. The world only celebrates the polished victories, the before. And after photos that hide the messy middle, the testimonies that sound like fairy tales with neat endings. But God celebrates every raw confession that costs you something to speak. The prayer that sounds more like screaming than praise. The forgiveness that tastes like blood in your mouth. The hope that looks like desperation wearing borrowed clothes. Every one of those moments is sacred to heaven. Every one of them makes God weep with recognition because he sees himself in your willingness to stay soft in a world that profits from hardness. Every one of them cracks open the plans of darkness that depend on your silence, your shame, your fear of being seen as less than perfect. So hear me clearly, with every broken piece of your heart. If you think today was your failure, if you think your breaking went unnoticed, if you think your honesty was too ugly to matter, you are wrong in ways that would shock you if you could see the celebration happening in heaven over your courage to be real. Because heaven already responded. God already wept. Angels already moved in response to your authenticity. And those tears mean your story is about to be rewritten in ways that will leave the enemy trembling with the realization that his greatest weapon against you just became the foundation of your greatest victory. If you could see what happened in the unseen realm when you finally let yourself break today, you would never apologize for your humanity again. Because what looked like defeat on earth became victory in eternity. What felt like the end became the beginning of something the enemy never saw coming. God's tears are not passive. They are not just emotional response to your pain. They are power in liquid form. They are heaven's way of declaring that this child is mine, and their breaking is about to become their making. Their wounds are about to become their weapons. Their scars are about to become their credentials. The enemy studies your masks. He builds traps based on your pretending, your hiding, your desperate attempts to look like you have it all together when your world is held together with prayer and sheer force of will. His strategy depends on your silence. His power grows from your shame. But today you broke that pattern. You did something hell never expected and heaven had been waiting for. You got real. You stopped performing when performance was demanded. You chose truth when lies felt safer and more acceptable. You let yourself be seen when hiding seemed smarter. That moment of devastating honesty triggered something beyond human comprehension. Like a chess game where the opponent thinks they have won by breaking your pieces, only to realize they have just freed you to play by completely different rules written in heaven, where vulnerability is strength. Heaven doesn't respond to perfect presentations polished for public consumption. Heaven responds to authentic desperation that bleeds truth. Heaven responds to honesty that costs something, that risks something, that reveals something real about who you are when the cameras stop rolling. One moment of real vulnerability carries more power than a lifetime of beautiful facades that fool everyone but touch no one. One instant of authentic brokenness shifts more in the spirit realm than years of religious performance that looks impressive but changes nothing. Stop apologizing for your scars. Stop treating your wounds like they are evidence of failure instead of proof of survival. Stop comparing your behind, the scene's reality, to everyone else's highlight reel that has been edited to remove every trace of struggle. Heaven isn't looking for your strength. Heaven already has unlimited power. Heaven is looking for your surrender, your willingness to let go of the image you have been protecting and the control you have been grasping with white knuckles. And today, you surrendered something precious and terrifying. You surrendered the lie that you had to be perfect to be loved, the lie that your worth was tied to your performance, the lie that vulnerability equals weakness and strength means never letting anyone see you sweat. Maybe you have felt invisible in your pain, like no one sees the war you are fighting behind the smile you wear like armor. But breaking is not small. Breaking is not failure. Breaking is the most courageous thing a human being can do in a world that profits from your pretending. Every tear you have cried says, "I am still here." Every moment you chose to keep going whispers, "The plan against me failed." Every time you let yourself be seen in your brokenness, heaven leans forward and declares they are ready for their miracle. You underestimate your own courage because you have been living in it so long you think it is normal. What tried to destroy you didn't win. That alone makes your scars a living victory song, proof that you are harder to kill than hell anticipated. And now it is not just about surviving anymore. It is about thriving from the inside out. When God weeps over your story, it is not just sorrow, it is preparation. The soil of your soul is being watered for something you have never imagined. The season of pretending is over. The season of authentic power is beginning. Everything that tried to bury you was actually planting you, and you are about to discover that what felt like your grave was actually your garden. You may feel everything shifting around you right now. Your spirit senses something deeper calling, because heaven's tears don't fall quietly. They change everything they touch. They soften ground that has been hard for years. Every honest moment has been like lightning striking parched ground. At first destructive, but then the rain comes, then healing comes, then growth comes. Everything that looked dead begins to stir with new life. Today's breaking sent shockwaves through eternity. Chains holding your lineage captive for generations just shattered. Doors sealed by shame just opened. Seeds buried under years of pain just broke through the surface. While you cannot see all of it yet, you will. Heaven doesn't weep without resurrection following. If God is weeping with you, you can stop hiding. Stop hiding your scars like they are weakness, instead of warrior status. Stop hiding your story like it is too messy for sanitized faith. Because if heaven honored your honesty, your worth was never in question. You might have been taught to only celebrate when you have it together, but heaven celebrates when you finally admit you are falling apart. The journey of coming undone is sacred. The process of breaking open is holy. The courage to let yourself be seen in pieces is revolutionary in a world that demands perfection from people who are still learning how to breathe through their pain. You stop carrying the weight of perfection and start walking with the freedom of being truly seen, truly known, truly loved, not despite your brokenness, but because of your courage to be authentic about it. That shift changes everything. You stop living for impossible approval and start moving in the unshakable love of the one who chose you at your worst, called you in your mess, and commissioned you in your brokenness. When you carry that truth, nothing can intimidate you anymore. Because if God weeps over your story, it means your story matters more than you have ever dared to believe. Your pain has purpose. Your scars have significance. Your breaking has been preparing you for a kind of blessing that only comes to those who have learned to find God in the darkness, to trust Him in the storm, to worship Him in the wilderness. Picture the Creator leaning forward from His throne, tears streaming down His face, not because you disappointed Him, but because you finally trusted Him with your real self, with the parts that don't have answers, with the pieces that don't fit the mold. Let heaven's tears become your confidence. Let them drown out every lie that says breaking disqualifies you. Let them silence every voice that tells you to hide your scars instead of letting them become your credentials. Because if the King is weeping, your story is just beginning. Your resurrection begins with recognizing that breaking was never your ending. It was your beginning. Your scars were never shame. They were credentials. Your tears were never wasted. They were watering ground for a harvest of hope. When words like this touch the deepest places in your soul, you need space to let them settle. You need atmosphere that honors the sacred work happening in your heart. That is why I created Simplified Serenity, a sanctuary of music I have composed specifically for prayer, meditation, and the kind of deep rest that heals from the inside out. The link is in the description. I would love to meet you there, in that sacred space where broken hearts remember they were always meant to soar, where wounded warriors remember they were always meant to win, where the bravest souls remember that their scars are not disqualifications but decorations of honor.